Hi, this is Dr. D from BrainBasedScience.com. Welcome to episode 3 of Brain Tips 2.0. Our topic today is teachers, guardians of the classroom climate. And this topic alone is a full day professional development, but as you know, that's not the purpose of Brain Tips. Brain Tips are never more than 10 minutes. So what I did was I placed some resources on the website under media, and then you have to go to Brain Tips 2.0, episode 3, and you'll see links. So if you want to go a little further, see some of the great resources that are there, go to brainbasedscience.com and you'll be able to see them. And please don't forget to subscribe below and like the video if you like it. So let us begin with episode 3, Brain Tips 2.0. So let's begin with a quote from Dr. Julie Willis's book and her daughter Milena Willis's book, which you see right here. Now, we know that academic performance and behavior improve when there is less stress and an environment with emotional supports. We know this, okay? So we have to think about this also as far as the climate when we're speaking about ELs and other vulnerable populations. Because high stress, what do we know about high stress? It activates the amygdala, the switching station, which switches our reactions from going to the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking brain, or the lower brain, which is the involuntary brain. When there is high stress, that communication between the upper and lower brain is greatly reduced. And if it's imminent danger, it's just cut off. We go involuntary. But we have to remember with English language learners, if you remember, there are 5 stages of language acquisition. The first 3 stages, pre-production, early production, and speech emergence, that's when the students are really just getting to know the language. In pre-production, it's the silent stage. Early production, they're getting a little bit more comfortable. They're getting a little bit more vocabulary. Speech emergence, they're starting to try to create these sentences, although there's still syntactic errors. So we have to realize that this population, we can pretty much say they're in a state of stress when those supports and scaffolds are not in place for them to learn. And if a teacher is teaching as if those ELs aren't in the room, that's a constant state of stress. That's a high level stress. So we want to be able to create this environment where we have less stress. Now, as we know, we're in a COVID world, right? So the question I generally get is, but I can't control the environment at home. No, you can't. Face it, okay? It's said, it's done. You cannot control the environment at home. But what you can control is the environment in your virtual classroom. That is still possible and you can still do it. You still have your rules. You still have your classroom management. You still have the protocols. You can still give your emotional support. You're caring for the students. Make it an environment that's a caring environment while the kids are with you. So those things can be done and you can create a virtual environment. Is it more work? Is it going to take more creativity on your part? Yes, it is. But it can happen. Let the time the kids are with you be their removal from their environment if their environment is toxic. At least they know during that time when they're with you that they have, they're in a safe place. Now let's define things that cause high stress. So before I start with giving you some examples of high stress, I want you to know on the website I created a chart. And on this chart, I have signs of high stress, what could be causing these reactions, whether it's fidgeting, zoning out, behavior issues, and then remedies that you can do to address these behaviors. So go to the website, brainbasedscience.com, under media, episode 3, and that's one of the resources that I created for you. Now let's talk about some high stress things that happen in the classroom. So it can be not understanding what's going on and what's being said, right? That's high stress. It could be not understanding the homework and having the fear that you can't hand in the homework or you didn't do it correctly. High stress areas also is when you are trying your best and you're seeing others answer questions quickly or finish their work quickly. They're just writing away, and you're sitting there and you don't know what's going on and what to do. Those are high stress areas. Okay. And that's why scaffolding and differentiation is very, very important. And things like, if students raise their hand, right? Students are raising their hands and you don't call on them. Believe it or not, that's a high stress situation. But if you go to them and say, Darlene, I see your hand is up. I'll be right with you. Believe it or not, that brings the stress levels down. Okay. When you're talking about showing improvement, have kids have their goals set. Everyone's not going to have the same goals. Your EL students in the pre-production stage can have different goals for them. But you can create a chart with the goals. You don't have to state what the goals are, but the kids can then see a chart and see themselves reaching towards their goals. Remember, it goes back to gamification. You set small incremental goals and allow the kids to meet these goals. That's going to be a dopamine release. The brain loves dopamine, okay? And it's going to be something very, very positive for them. So don't underestimate goal setting for the kids so that they have the opportunity to reach those goals. So those are some of the things that are definitely high stress situations. And also one of the things that I am very, very guilty of, and I'm sure a lot of you are pretty guilty of it also. We have that little strategy that we use, that we put the names on sticks. And then we pull the stick out of the cup or whatever we have it in, or baggie, and we call on those students. I was guilty of that, and I thought that I was doing such a great thing because I'm going to make these kids pay attention. But actually, that's extreme high stress for those kids to not know if they're going to be called on. So one of the rules that I had in the classroom was when I had posed a question, and I also included effective questioning techniques, a rubric there, or a chart there that's also on the website of how you can use different types of questioning or have the kids create the questions. So you would teach something and then you would tell the kids, I need you to create a question based on what you want to know, or create a question for me to ask the class. So now the kids are actually creating the questions. Or you can create a question, have the kids work together and have them together try to create the answer. So this can happen in breakout rooms. So you can present the question, put the kids in breakout rooms, let them have this discussion time, be able to come together as a group as to what they think the answer is, and then be able to present that answer out, or to send you the question using the whiteboard app. Microsoft Teams has it. Whiteboard.fi has it also, where they can send to you, or even in the chat, the answer to the question that they have, and then you can look those over to be able to answer it. But as far as that name on the stick, that is a really, really, really high stress area. So that's something you really might want to think twice about before you do that. So how do we address the situation if we notice that there is high stress happening with our students in the classroom? Or how do we keep the kids from getting to that level of high stress? That is when we're going to talk about Synapse. Now, that's a play on words that was created by Dr. Judy Willis, Synapse and Synapse. So I'm going to show you this 37-second video so that you can understand what a synapse is. And then once it's over, then I'm going to show you how you use Synapse in the classroom. How do you plan for it in order to keep from activating the amygdala and keep the kids in a low stress environment so that they can learn.
A neuron transmits nerve impulses through itself, but when it's time to send a message to another cell, most neurons will send chemicals to the next neuron across a very small gap between them. The junctions between neurons and the next cell are called synapses.
So now you see that the synapse is this small space, this very small space between two neurons. The neurons have to talk to each other because the information that they're receiving during lessons or learning or anything, but let's just use it since we're talking about education, that they're learning, this information is coming in through the neurons, but the neuron has to talk to another neuron because the information has to make its way so that it gets into memory. So what happens is the information is coming in, right? All this information is coming in. And then in order for one neuron to speak to the other neuron, it's done through neurotransmitters. So the neurotransmitters, think of it like this. So neurotransmitters are little guys and they get into this boat and they're swimming and they take the boat and they go over to the next neuron. They get attached to the receptor because there's a receptor cell there. So the neurotransmitter connects to the receptor, passes the information, and then what happens is either those neurotransmitters are just depleted or some of them get an uptake, which means they go back to the other neuron and they wait for more information to come in so they can get over and pass that information to the other neuron as it makes its way to where it needs to go so that we can have learn. That's part of the process of memory and learning. But these neurotransmitters are the communicators. They are the messengers that are sending the information over. But what happens is that if we do not give a synapse, you get it? Syn is because synapse, but the synapse is, the brain gets to take a nap, take a break. It's imperative for that to happen because the neurotransmitters get depleted. Once the neurotransmitters are depleted, either the learning is slow going, right? And not that much learning is happening because the transfer of information slows down. So when we do a synapse, what it does is the part of the brain that's activated, that's learning, when we do a synapse, it gives that part of the brain a break. So we do an activity that activates another part of the brain where the neurotransmitters are there. And during this time, the activated part of the brain that we were just using replenishes and revitalizes. So it replenishes the neurotransmitters and it revitalizes itself. Now, this only takes a couple minutes for it to happen if you didn't deplete at all, if you got it before the high stress came. If you did not, if the kid started fidgeting, dazing off and gazing, it's going to take a little bit more time. So that's why you want to time your synapse. You want to plan the synapse. So you might say, but Dr. D, I teach in a remote environment. Kids have their screens off because I'm not a proponent for having screens on. Then there is a formula. And the formula is this, and it's based on the brain, of course, right? Age plus 2 minutes. That's how you know how long to keep talking to these kids with this direct instruction. Age plus 2 minutes. So when you're planning your lesson, plan it according to, okay, if I'm doing direct instruction, I can do the age plus 2 minutes. Then I have to give them something to do because believe it or not, by you giving them something to do and they're not having to sit here and listen to you, you're also replenishing the brain. Or you can do a synapse. Now, I used to always say that it should not be content specific because we're still activating that part of the brain. But as I did more research, I found out it can be content specific. It's just a different way for you to teach it. You might have the kids work together and create a drawing of something that's happening of the lesson. You can have them go to a breakout room and talk about it. But the fact of the matter is your direct instruction information coming from your mouth needs to be age plus 2 minutes. Now, you can use other things, which I like to do. You can have them do physical movement is huge. Touch their toes, jumping jacks. You can put up a puzzle like Skylark Fox, which one's missing. I have a favorite one, which is which one doesn't belong, wodb.ca, wodb.ca. You'll see it up here. These are different activities that the kids can actually do because the purpose is you have to allow that activated part of the brain, number one, to process the learning so that it can make it from short-term memory, working memory, we can start getting it into long-term memory. That's one of the biggest reasons why you want to do Synapse, is because the brain needs time to process that information. Okay, so this is all very important. These synapse or brain breaks are extremely important, and it's going to keep the stress level down. It's going to keep that classroom environment emotionally positive and safe for the kids, and it will keep the behavioral issues down as well. Synapse are awesome, and you need to try them in your classroom. So I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but hopefully you really got something out of that, so that you understand that in order to have this positive classroom environment, you are the controller of that environment, face to face and remotely. Okay, they need to know that they are safe. They need to know that they are emotionally safe. So what things can you do? Recognize what high stress looks like in students. And also, one important thing I want you to remember, high stress does not always happen with just the kids who are struggling, or English language learners, or special education students. Kids who are having no problem with the content also go through high stress as well, because it's a lot of information coming at the same time, and they're trying their best to get it done. So these synapses are great for them as well, because the purpose of the synapse is to replenish the neurotransmitters. We run out. They have to be replenished. And it allows also for that learning, as I just stated, to work its way to long-term memory. Doesn't become permanent. That's a totally different conversation. It takes a little bit of time to become permanent by repeated practice. But we want to get it from the working memory and the short-term memory into the long-term memory. But we have to allow the brain time to process this information. That's a big reason why we want to do Synapse. And also age plus 2 minutes. If you stick with your direct instruction and age plus 2 minutes, direct instruction, age plus 2 minutes, give them an activity to do, have them come back, review it, close it. Close that first segment that you did. The brain needs closure, needs to make sense of it. Do a Synapse. Then every 10 to 20 minutes, you should really do a Synapse, okay? But then again, that 10 to 20 minutes is going to vary on the age. It's going to vary depending on the complexity of the work, all right? It's going to vary depending on if it's an EL, because an EL is sucking up more working memory than anyone else in that room. And special ed kids, they're sucking up a lot of their working memory, okay? So that 10 to 20 minutes, it's just a gauge, but age plus 2 minutes is really, I think, the safest formula that you can use. And then after you finish that segment, then you go back to the next piece. You do direct instruction again for age plus 2 minutes. So when you're lesson planning, you lesson planning according to these segments. What am I going to say? Age plus 2 minutes. So if you're in 5th grade, that's going to be approximately 12 minutes. I know I can talk for 12 minutes. Give them something to do for 2 minutes. Right? Have them come back, talk about it, explain it. Maybe that's another 3 to 5 minutes. Close it. Ask that closure question. Gauge the kids if they got it. If not, you got to go to reteach. Then you go to the next segment of your lesson. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. Remember, remote instruction can take between 50% and 100% longer. But you need to, regardless remote or in person, age plus 2 minutes, use Synapse. Happy sciencing, Dr. D.